I want a divorce.
The words landed while the coffin was still suspended above the grave. Naomi Carter didn't turn at first. Her hands were clenched in front of her, fingers digging into each other so hard her nails cut skin. She was standing inches from the open ground where her father would soon be lowered, the smell of damp soil thick in the air, heavy enough to taste.
I said I want a divorce.
This time, the voice was closer.
Ethan, please, not here.
She said, her voice strained and brittle. He didn't move.
Now is exactly when this needs to happen.
Behind them, the pastor faltered mid-prayer. The ropes holding the coffin creaked softly, the sound cutting through the silence like a warning no one heeded. A few mourners shifted in their seats. Someone whispered Naomi's name. No one stepped forward.
My father hasn't been buried yet. They haven't even lowered him.
Naomi said. Ethan followed her gaze to the coffin, then looked back at her, unmoved.
That doesn't change anything.
Her chest tightened.
What is that?
She asked, though dread had already settled deep in her stomach.
Divorce papers.
Ethan replied.
Everything's ready.
The world narrowed to the space between them.
You brought legal documents to my father's funeral?
She asked slowly, disbelief bleeding into every word.
I brought closure. This marriage has been over for a long time.
She shook her head, as if trying to physically dislodge the moment.
You couldn't wait a single day?
One day turns into delays. Delays turn into complications.
Ethan said. She looked at him harder now.
What kind of complications?
She asked. Ethan didn't answer. He extended the envelope instead.
Sign it.
Her hands trembled as she took it. The paper was crisp, untouched, planned. She opened it clumsily, her fingers slick with cold and grief, and flipped through the pages without reading. Her eyes went straight to the last page. His signature. Bold, certain. And the date, today. Her breath caught violently in her throat.
You signed this today?
She whispered.
Yes.
You filed today?
Yes.
The confirmation came too easily.
You woke up this morning, knowing my father was being buried today. And this is what you chose to do.
She said, voice breaking.
I chose not to wait anymore. I've waited long enough.
Ethan replied. The words felt rehearsed.
You waited while my father was dying.
She said.
While I slept in hospital chairs. While I begged doctors for time.
And during that time,
Ethan snapped, irritation finally cracking through.
You disappeared from this marriage.
Gasps rippled through the crowd now. The pastor had stopped entirely. The coffin hung motionless above the grave, forgotten.
You mean when I was taking care of my father? When he couldn't walk? When he couldn't eat?
Naomi said.
I mean when I was paying for everything.
Ethan shot back.
The house, the bills, the medical expenses. I didn't sign up to become a caretaker's afterthought.
Her knees weakened.
So this is punishment for not prioritizing you over a dying parent.
She said.
This is reality. I married a partner, not an obligation.
Ethan said. The word struck like a slap.
An obligation?
She repeated.
You stopped being my wife. You became a responsibility.
He said. She looked around then, searching faces for intervention. Her aunt, her cousin, friends from work. All of them watched in stunned silence, grief freezing them in place. Ethan leaned closer, lowering his voice. Sign it now, he said. If you drag this out, it won't end well for you. Her heart stuttered. What does that mean? She asked. It means judges care about efficiency, he said. And timing. She felt something shift inside her. You already filed, she said suddenly. Yes. You filed before today. Yes. Her grip tightened on the papers. You planned this around the funeral. I planned this around the law, Ethan replied. Which you clearly don't understand. The ropes creaked again. Slowly, the coffin began to descend. Naomi's vision blurred. This is cruelty, she said, her voice barely holding together. This is strategy, Ethan replied. He straightened his jacket. My lawyer will contact you. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. He stepped back. I'll have movers come for my remaining things tomorrow. You don't need to be there. Ethan, she said. He paused. You will regret doing this here, she said quietly. You will regret how you did it. He turned, his expression calm, almost bored. No judge cares about feelings, he said. They care about filings. Then he walked away. His shoes crunched against gravel. He didn't look back. Naomi remained standing as the coffin disappeared into the earth. Dirt followed. The sound was dull, final, irreversible. She folded the divorce papers slowly, methodically, and pressed them against her chest as though they were something alive. She didn't cry. Not yet. What she didn't see was the older man standing near the back of the cemetery, his hands clenched at his sides. He had worked with her father decades earlier. He had recognized Ethan's name the moment it was spoken, and he understood exactly why filing before a funeral mattered. As Ethan's car pulled away, the man turned quietly and left the cemetery. Because what Ethan had done wasn't just heartless. It was procedurally reckless. Ethan believed the paperwork protected him. He didn't know the timing he used as a weapon would later force a judge to stop the case, mid-hearing, and ask a question no one was prepared to answer. By Monday morning, the story had already been told. Naomi Carter didn't know who told it first. She only knew she wasn't the one telling it at all. She returned to work because she didn't know what else to do. Staying home felt unbearable. The apartment was too quiet, too full of unfinished echoes. Every room carried her father's absence, and every surface reminded her that Ethan had already taken what mattered to him. Work, at least, had structure. She arrived early, dressed in the same black she'd worn to the funeral, her eyes swollen but her posture upright. The security guard nodded, then hesitated, as if he wanted to say something and didn't know how. Inside the elevator, two co-workers stood shoulder to shoulder. Their conversation stopped when she entered. "Morning," Naomi said softly. They nodded. One looked at the floor. She felt it immediately. The shift. The space that hadn't existed before. By the time she reached her desk, she had already heard her name twice. Not spoken to her. Spoken about her. Low voices. Pauses that stretched too long. She logged in and tried to focus, but her screen blurred. Numbers, compliance logs, internal reports, everything she normally handled with calm precision now swam in front of her. At 10:30, her manager emailed her. HR would like a word. The office was glass-walled and sterile, the kind of place where difficult conversations were delivered with careful smiles and legally safe language. A woman from Human Resources sat across from her, hands folded neatly on the desk, sympathy arranged carefully across her face. First, the woman said, "We want to say how sorry we are for your loss." "Thank you," Naomi replied. "And we understand this is a very difficult time," she continued, "but there have been concerns." Naomi felt her stomach tighten. "Concerns about what?" she asked. "About distraction," the woman said gently. "About emotional availability. About whether personal matters might be affecting your professional judgment." "My father died 3 days ago," Naomi said. "And my husband served me divorce papers at the funeral." The woman nodded, as though she had already rehearsed this response. "Yes," she said. "That's part of why we wanted to check in." Naomi stared at her. "So you're concerned that grief makes me unreliable?" "We're not saying that," the woman replied quickly. "We're simply asking you to be mindful." Mindful. The word hung there, heavy and vague. Mindful of what? Naomi asked. The woman hesitated. Of perception. Naomi understood then. Ethan had moved faster than she realized. By Monday morning, the story had already been told. Naomi Carter didn't know who told it first. She only knew she wasn't the one telling it at all. She returned to work because she didn't know what else to do. Staying home felt unbearable. The apartment was too quiet, too full of unfinished echoes. Every room carried her father's absence, and every surface reminded her that Ethan had already taken what mattered to him. Work, at least, had structure. She arrived early, dressed in the same black she'd worn to the funeral, her eyes swollen but her posture upright. The security guard nodded, then hesitated, as if he wanted to say something and didn't know how. Inside the elevator, two co-workers stood shoulder to shoulder. Their conversation stopped when she entered. "Morning," Naomi said softly. They nodded. One looked at the floor. She felt it immediately. The shift. The space that hadn't existed before. By the time she reached her desk, she had already heard her name twice. Not spoken to her. Spoken about her. Low voices. pauses that stretched too long. She logged in and tried to focus, but her screen blurred. Numbers, compliance logs, internal reports, everything she normally handled with calm precision now swam in front of her. At 10:30, her manager emailed her. HR would like a word. The office was glass-walled and sterile, the kind of place where difficult conversations were delivered with careful smiles and legally safe language. A woman from Human Resources sat across from her, hands folded neatly on the desk, sympathy arranged carefully across her face. First, the woman said, "We want to say how sorry we are for your loss." "Thank you," Naomi replied. "And we understand this is a very difficult time," she continued, "but there have been concerns." Naomi felt her stomach tighten. "Concerns about what?" she asked. "About distraction," the woman said gently. "About emotional availability. About whether personal matters might be affecting your professional judgment." "My father died 3 days ago," Naomi said. "And my husband served me divorce papers at the funeral." The woman nodded, as though she had already rehearsed this response. "Yes," she said. "That's part of why we wanted to check in." Naomi stared at her. "So you're concerned that grief makes me unreliable?" "We're not saying that," the woman replied quickly. "We're simply asking you to be mindful." Mindful. The word hung there, heavy and vague. Mindful of what? Naomi asked. The woman hesitated. Of perception. Naomi understood then. Ethan had moved faster than she realized. She thought of Ethan's words at the funeral. Judges care about timing. The next morning, she met her attorney, Clara Whitman. Clara was calm, sharp-eyed, and unflinchingly direct. She listened without interrupting as Naomi recounted the funeral, the papers, the HR meeting, the messages. When Naomi finished, Clara leaned back in her chair. "He rushed," she said. Naomi looked up. "What?" "He rushed this filing," Clara repeated. "And when people rush legal processes, they usually do it for a reason." "He wanted to control the narrative," Naomi said. "Yes," Clara replied. "And something else." She tapped the divorce petition with her pen. "This language," she continued, "about asset exposure. It's unusually specific for someone claiming you have nothing." Naomi's stomach tightened again. "You think he knows something I don't?" "I think," Clara said carefully, "he suspects something, and he didn't want time for it to surface." Naomi shook her head. "There is nothing." Clara studied her. "Are you certain?" "Yes." "Are you absolutely certain your father never mentioned investments, holdings, partnerships?" Naomi hesitated. "My father was private," she said. "But he never talked about money." Clara nodded. "That doesn't mean there wasn't any." 2 days later, Naomi received a letter. Not from Ethan's lawyer. From an estate planning firm. Regarding the estate of Samuel Carter. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a formal notice requesting her presence for a consultation. No details. No explanations. Just a time and an address. She stared at it, heart pounding. "What are you hiding, Dad?" she whispered. Meanwhile, Ethan's confidence was growing. He moved quickly. Too quickly. He froze joint accounts. Changed passwords. Redirected mail. Filed motions demanding financial disclosures Naomi didn't yet understand. His lawyer sent letters thick with legal language and thinly veiled threats. Delay will be noted. Non-compliance will be addressed. Naomi felt hunted. When the hearing date arrived, the courtroom was fuller than she expected. Friends of Ethan's sat behind him. People who nodded at him whispered encouragement. Naomi sat with Clara, hands folded tightly in her lap. The judge entered. Proceedings began. Ethan's lawyer spoke first. Confident, polished. "This is a straightforward dissolution," he said. The petitioner acted decisively to protect himself from financial risk. The judge nodded. Then Clara stood. "Your Honor," she said, "before we proceed, there is a matter of timing that concerns the court." The judge looked up. "Explain." Clara took a breath. "The petitioner served divorce papers at the respondent's father's funeral," she said, "while burial was in progress." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Ethan stiffened. "That is not legally relevant," his lawyer interjected. The judge raised a hand. "It may be," she said calmly, "if it speaks to intent." She looked directly at Ethan. "Mr. Carter," she said, "why did you file on that day?" Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, then answered, "Because delays create complications." The judge studied him for a long moment. "And what complications were you concerned about?" she asked. "Silence, not dramatic silence. Dangerous silence." Ethan's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. The judge waited, because for the first time since the funeral, the story Ethan told so confidently had encountered resistance. And Naomi felt it. That subtle shift. The moment when power paused. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Carter," she said, "before this court continues, I need clarification on one issue." She tapped the file. "Did you have reason to believe an inheritance was imminent when you filed?" Ethan froze. And the courtroom went completely silent. The silence didn't break. It thickened. Naomi could hear it in the room, the way breath stalled in dozens of lungs at once, the way bodies stilled as though motion itself might influence what came next. The courtroom, moments ago alive with whispered confidence and procedural certainty, now felt suspended between decisions. The judge's question lingered in the air. "Did you have reason to believe an inheritance was imminent when you filed?" Ethan Carter didn't answer immediately. He looked at his lawyer. Just a glance. Calculated. The kind of look exchanged between people who had rehearsed for everything except this. "No," his lawyer said quickly, standing. "Your Honor, there was no knowledge of any inheritance. This question is speculative and prejudicial." The judge did not acknowledge him. Her eyes remained fixed on Ethan. "I asked Mr. Carter," she said evenly. Ethan swallowed. "No," he said. "I didn't." The words sounded smaller than he intended. The judge nodded slowly, as though absorbing not just the answer, but how it was delivered. "Then help me understand," she continued, "why your filing references asset exposure in such specific terms." Ethan's lawyer cleared his throat. "That language is standard." "It is not," the judge replied calmly. "Not in cases without known assets." Her gaze dropped briefly to the file in front of her, then returned to Ethan. "Mr. Carter," she said, "you filed on the same day as a funeral. You served papers during burial. You requested expedited proceedings. You referenced financial risk. That sequence suggests urgency beyond emotion." Ethan's jaw tightened. Naomi felt her pulse pounding in her ears. She hadn't expected this. None of this. The judge turned to Clara. "Ms. Whitman," she said, "does your client have knowledge of an inheritance?" Clara stood. "No, Your Honor," she said. "My client was unaware of any estate matters beyond routine probate. However," she paused. "She received a letter from an estate planning firm 2 days after the filing." The courtroom shifted. Ethan's head snapped toward Naomi. "What letter?" his lawyer demanded. The judge raised her hand. "One thing at a time," she said. She turned back to Clara. "When was this letter sent?" Clara checked her notes. Dated 4 days prior to the filing. Delivered afterward. The judge's eyes narrowed. "So," she said slowly, "someone contacted the respondent about estate matters before the divorce was filed, but she did not receive the notice until after." "Yes, Your Honor." The judge leaned back in her chair. Ethan felt sweat gathering at the base of his neck. "That's a coincidence," his lawyer said quickly. "Estate firms send notices routinely." "Perhaps," the judge replied. "But timing matters." The words landed heavily. Ethan shifted in his seat. Naomi watched him now, not with anger, not even fear, but with a growing sense of clarity. He wasn't in control anymore. The rhythm he'd relied on was breaking. The judge glanced at the clock. "I'm calling a brief recess," she said. 10 minutes. The gavel struck. Court officers moved. Conversations erupted in low, urgent bursts. Ethan leaned toward his lawyer immediately. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he hissed. "Lower your voice," his lawyer snapped back. "And answer my question. Did you know something?" "No," Ethan said. Not exactly. Not exactly isn't an answer. Ethan rubbed his temples. I heard things. Old conversations. Her father worked with people. He was quiet. I didn't think it was nothing. His lawyer stared at him. You filed on a hunch? I filed to protect myself. You served papers at a funeral, the lawyer said sharply. Judges don't like that. They don't like being manipulated either, Ethan shot back. His lawyer sighed. You may have done both. Across the room, Naomi sat quietly as Clara leaned in. He's rattled, Clara said. That's good. Naomi nodded slowly. I didn't know any of this. I believe you, Clara replied, which is exactly why his behavior matters. Naomi stared down at her hands. What happens now? Now, Clara said, the court starts asking questions neither of us expected. The recess ended. Everyone returned to their seats. The judge resumed, her expression composed but alert. Before we proceed, she said, I want clarity on the estate matter. She looked directly at Naomi. Ms. Carter, she said, have you met with the estate firm yet? No, Your Honor, Naomi replied. The appointment is scheduled for tomorrow. The judge nodded. Then this court is being asked to rule on asset division without knowing whether assets exist, she said. That is problematic. Ethan's lawyer stood again. Your Honor, with respect, this is a dissolution proceeding, not probate. And yet, the judge replied, probate appears to be influencing the urgency of this filing. She turned back to Ethan. Mr. Carter, she said, did you move or restrict any shared funds prior to filing? Ethan hesitated. Yes, he said finally. I froze the joint account. When? The day before filing. Naomi inhaled sharply. The judge's pen stopped moving. And did you inform your wife? She asked. No. The judge looked at him steadily. Why not? Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. To prevent interference, his lawyer interjected quickly. The judge didn't look away from Ethan. Interference with what? She asked. The judge set her pen down. Mr. Carter, she said, this court has an obligation to ensure equity. Equity requires transparency. Your actions suggest concealment. That's an accusation, his lawyer snapped. No, the judge replied calmly. It's an observation. She leaned forward. And it's becoming a concern. Naomi felt her heart pounding, but underneath it was something else, something steadier. The sense that the ground beneath this case was shifting. The judge glanced once more at the file, then spoke. I am not prepared to proceed with asset discussions today. Ethan stiffened. Your Honor. I said I am not prepared, she repeated. Not until the estate consultation occurs. She paused. And not until this court understands why a husband chose to file and serve divorce papers during a burial. The words cut through the room. Ethan's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently again. The judge raised her hand. This court does not pause lightly, she said. But timing speaks. Intent speaks. And right now, the intent here is unclear. She looked at both parties. I am considering a suspension of proceedings. Naomi's breath caught. Ethan's head snapped up. You can't, he started. The judge's voice sharpened. I can, she said. And I will if necessary. The room buzzed with restrained shock. She turned to Clara. Ms. Whitman, she said, I want the estate consultation summary submitted immediately once received. Yes, Your Honor. She turned back to Ethan. And Mr. Carter, she continued, you are instructed not to move, hide, or restrict any assets pending further review. Ethan's mouth went dry. Any violation, the judge added, will be viewed as bad faith. She raised the gavel. We will reconvene after the estate consultation. The gavel fell. The hearing was over. But the case was no longer moving forward. As the courtroom emptied, Ethan remained seated, staring at the table in front of him. Naomi stood slowly, legs weak, heart racing. She hadn't won. But something far more important had happened. The momentum had broken. As she walked past Ethan, he finally looked up at her. His expression wasn't anger. It was fear. The next morning, Naomi would walk into an office expecting paperwork. Instead, she would learn why her father stayed silent about his past, and why Ethan's urgency had not been accidental. The office was quieter than Naomi expected. No dramatic music, no hushed urgency, just the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the muted rustle of papers being sorted behind a desk. The sign on the door read, Harrison and Blythe Estate Services. Naomi stood in the hallway for a moment longer than necessary, her hand hovering near the door handle. She had walked into courtrooms, hospitals, and funeral grounds without hesitation, but this felt different. Because this wasn't about grief anymore. This was about the truth. She stepped inside. The attorney waiting for her was older than she imagined, silver-haired, measured, with the kind of calm that came from decades of holding other people's secrets. He rose when she entered, offering a hand. "Miss Carter," he said gently. "I'm Alan Blythe. Thank you for coming." She shook his hand and sat. "I'm going to say this plainly," he continued, folding his hands on the desk. "Your father was very specific about how and when this information should be disclosed." Naomi's chest tightened. "He knew," she said quietly. "He knew something like this might happen." Alan nodded. "Your father was part of a professional consortium early in his career," he explained. "Infrastructure projects. Long-term municipal contracts. When he left active work, he retained a minority stake. He never liquidated it." Naomi stared at him. "Why wouldn't he tell me?" "Because he didn't want money to speak louder than character," Alan replied. "And because he believed timing reveals intent." Naomi felt her throat close. "What does that mean?" she asked. Alan opened a folder and slid it across the desk. "2 months before his death, your father amended his estate documents," he said. "He anticipated legal pressure. He anticipated opportunism." Naomi's hands shook as she opened the folder. Inside were valuations, holdings, dates. Nothing extravagant. Nothing obscene. But enough. Enough to matter. Enough to explain everything. "He didn't want this disclosed until after probate began," Alan continued. "Specifically so that no one could accuse you of influencing the timing." Naomi closed her eyes. "And my husband?" she asked. Alan hesitated. "He contacted this office," he said carefully. "Indirectly. Asked general questions. Hypotheticals. About filing timelines." Naomi felt something cold settle in her chest. "So he suspected," she said. "Yes." "And he rushed," she whispered. "Yes." She sat back slowly. When Naomi left the office, the city felt sharper, brighter, louder. The world hadn't changed, but she had. By the time the court reconvened 2 days later, the room was fuller than before. Word had spread. Not gossip, concern. The judge entered and took her seat, her expression unreadable. The clerk called the case. Naomi felt her pulse in her ears. Clara stood first. "Your Honor," she said, "we have submitted the estate consultation summary as requested." The judge nodded. "I've reviewed it." She turned to Ethan. "Mr. Carter," she said, "you stated you had no knowledge of potential inheritance." "Yes," he replied, voice tight. "And yet," the judge continued, "you contacted an estate firm prior to filing." Ethan's lawyer shifted. "Your Honor." "I am speaking to Mr. Carter," the judge said calmly. Ethan swallowed. "I asked general questions," he said. "That's not illegal." "No," the judge replied. "But it is relevant." She leaned forward. "You filed with unusual urgency. You restricted shared assets without disclosure. You served papers during a burial. And you referenced asset exposure without confirmed assets." The courtroom was silent. "This court does not punish people for divorcing," the judge continued. "But it does not reward strategy built on emotional vulnerability." She paused. "Proceedings are halted." Ethan stiffened. "Effective immediately," she said, "this case is suspended pending a full review of intent, disclosure, and timing." The gavel struck. Ethan's lawyer leaned toward him, whispering urgently. Ethan stared forward, his face pale. Naomi didn't smile. She didn't cry. She exhaled. In the weeks that followed, the truth settled into place quietly. No headlines. No public spectacle. Just consequences. The court required disclosures. Timelines were examined. Intent was weighed. Ethan's urgency became his undoing. What he thought would protect him had exposed him. The case resumed months later under different terms. Slower. Fair. Transparent. When it ended, there was no dramatic ruling, just equity restored and leverage removed. Ethan walked away with what he had earned. No more. No less. Naomi walked away with something else. Perspective. Months later, she returned to the cemetery alone. The grass had grown back. The earth had settled. Her father's headstone stood quiet and solid beneath the sky. "I didn't understand then," she said softly. "But I do now." She thought of the judge's pause. The questions that mattered. The way systems sometimes fail, and sometimes correct themselves. Her father hadn't left her wealth to protect her. He had left her timing. She stood there for a long time. Not grieving. Reflecting. Because what happened to her wasn't rare. It happened every day, in quieter rooms with fewer witnesses. People rushed legal processes when they believed someone was too broken to resist. Institutions leaned toward efficiency over empathy. Narratives were set before truth arrived. And sometimes, justice didn't fail. It just waited for the right moment to interrupt. Naomi walked away knowing this wasn't just her story. It was a reminder that grief should never be weaponized, that urgency can reveal guilt, and that when authority pauses long enough to ask the right question, power shifts. Some people believe speed equals strength, but real strength lies in restraint, in systems that slow down when something feels wrong, in judges who ask why, not just when, in communities that refuse to let vulnerability be punished. If this story moved you, like this video so more people can see it. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about justice, power, and quiet resilience. And we want to hear from you. Do you think courts should consider how divorce papers are served? Have you ever seen someone use timing as a weapon? Should institutions slow down more when grief is involved? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters, and someone reading it might need it more than you know. Justice isn't always loud, but when it finally speaks, it changes everything.